Blessed are the poor in spirit.
The power of Arjuna is the power of the commitment that we make to the path of awakening. Good morning and welcome everyone to the post-Mahabharata era. We, and many of you I see, have been there this coming week, have experienced the inspiration, the humor, the thrill, the edge-of-the-seat suspense of this great world epic brought to us by Murali Venkatrao, our world-famous storyteller from Bangalore, India. We've had a wonderful time this week, and for those of you who weren't able to come, in the upcoming weeks we'll be able to post the excellent video and audio on the internet for all to see. Last night we gave a halting acknowledgement. I was frozen to the bone, I think, like some of us, by 9 o'clock, and I couldn't remember everybody's names to thank, but I especially want to thank Louise back there up on the camera. Some years ago, Louise ushered us single-handedly into the internet era of live streaming our Sunday services and positioned us, therefore, when the pandemic hit, to inspire and guide us, and Christina and Rick, especially on staff, to move rapidly into the video Zoom environment. But this week of the Mahabharata, with the stage at Ananda community nearby that was rebuilt, really under the supervision and hard work, especially of Rick Johnston, our manager here, has ushered in the I won't say the end of the COVID thing, I'm not authorized to say that, but it ushers in the welcoming of our larger community around us back into the Ananda community in Linwood, which had been pretty much locked down the last couple of years. We hope to do more things on our beautiful stage. And so the Mahabharata, the whole week, was really a celebration of so many different things. And I also want to honor our core staff here at the temple. I've had several visitors from other communities here staying with Padma and I the last almost 2 weeks, and I say to them, we're just so blessed with so many harmonious, talented, creative, dedicated souls on staff here, and it's really quite a blessing. So what does this have to do about who are true Christians? Well, stay tuned. I'll tell you just in a minute now. You know, the Mahabharata, the world's longest epic, you know, in the history of India and other countries, the dating of things is fairly imprecise. So scholars and pundits argue about these things. But as Murali described, when the sage Vyasa, the author of the Mahabharata, manifested himself to the Pandavas, the clan of the good guys, and reminded them, told them that their own personal struggles in the kingdom of that era were far bigger than they thought. That they and the war that was to ensue was really the small rock with a large lever to move the large rock of humanity's consciousness down into a lower age. You know, in my avatar as a historian, or a person who loves history, I should say, one of my favorite books is that book inspired by Sri Yukteswar's recalibration of human history. In the mere introduction to the only book he wrote, The Holy Science, some of our members wrote the book that I treasure called The Yugas. And at the time of the Mahabharata, which, as I say, the date is somewhat imprecise, but in the Mahabharata itself, it acknowledged that humanity was about to enter the lowest age of consciousness. But when you step back from that, as our authors of the Yugas did, we see a phenomenon that historians have called the Bronze Age collapse. Somewhere between 1500 BC and the onset of the Dark Age at 700 BC, civilizations throughout the planet were destroyed at that time. In preparation, you might say, I do say, for a lower consciousness that would enter into humanity. The other thing that Murali kept alluding to was that in the descent from a higher age, and the higher ages and highest age, into this lower age, humanity was also had the memory of something that we do not. The memory and the residue of the power of consciousness to manifest. And so that memory, you know, we think with our somewhat arrogant or at least ignorant view of humanity having come from the Stone Age and yada, 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 and this supposedly. Imagine calling our civilization the highest we've achieved. I don't think so. I hope not. In any case, from that point of view, we look at creation myths and stories as being, oh, those ignorant savages, they didn't know what was going on. They just had this story about a flood or Garden of Eden and stuff. What a bunch of schmucks, right? And how about this instead? How about those storytellers? They weren't particularly interested in you know, how it all worked. They actually knew how it worked. They actually knew where we came from. And the story of the battle of life, which is the inner battle that goes on in human consciousness, is the real story, not the dynasties and the kings and the wars and all that stuff, which quite honestly reflects very little of human life and consciousness. It just is, you know, those things that we might have some record of and so on. And so this story, it's our story. And the question of who are true Christians or who are true devotees is really the question posed to us by great epics like the Mahabharata. And so what we learn in that great epic is that we each have, you know, one of the things Murali mentioned was that a lovely quote from, I think, the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is part of the Mahabharata, in which Krishna quotes Prajapati, which goes way back into a higher age, into the Vedas. And Prajapati saying that the Creator has given to humankind a gift. And this gift is the ability, the potential to offer our lives into a greater cause, into a greater power, into a higher power. Now, what isn't said in that is the obvious, which is for the most part humanity, especially in the lower ages, and I include to some degree the age we're in, we also can simply take for ourselves. We can be selfish. And so Prajapati says, Krishna quotes Prajapati saying that when you seek to achieve something, offer yourself into that higher power. And those higher powers, whatever forms they may take, will be the instruments through which you can achieve that which you seek. Now, in the quotation, it doesn't mention whether what you seek is good, bad, or indifferent. The principle, let pranayam be your religion, as we chanted just a few minutes ago. The understanding which is the hallmark of the age into which we have just entered. The understanding is that behind the appearances of the creation and behind the appearance of my body and my somewhat superficial, sometimes even petty personality is the great power of prana, the great power that has brought us to life, that distinguishes this physical body from a corpse, is the life-sustaining power and prana that resides within us. This revelation, which came to us officially, you might say, through Einstein, at the very beginning of what Sri Yukteswar called this new age of Dwapara. And this beginning of the age of Dwapara was the end of the same descending age when the Mahabharata took place. And so Krishna and the great ones gave to us a time capsule, both in the Mahabharata but also in its divine essence in the Bhagavad Gita, the time capsule of the Gita, which is now being rediscovered because we are at the same point in human consciousness that they were at the end of descending Dwapara Yuga, somewhere between, approximately 700 BC, according to Sri Yukteswar. And in the era of the 20th century, Sri Yukteswar said, we have entered into the central era of Dwapara. And so we have in this great epic. We were chatting last night after the final chapter of the Mahabharata, that to tell a story, which stories come to us, the ability, a picture is worth 1,000 words, we say. And those stories from ancient times convey to people who have a higher level of intuition what they need to know, the truth. For us, we need the words. The Vedas weren't written down for centuries until we got dumber. And we had to write things down to remember them. Does that sound familiar to us now? And so what we were talking about is that when you tell a story, it's not necessarily that natural to have to explain it. But because we are who we are, we need the explanation. We're not content with just the story because we don't really understand the story. Now that's reversing human history on its head, isn't it? Because that's not how we've been raised to look at history. But I say to you, I believe at least, and I have good authority here, Sri Yukteswar, that it's exactly the opposite of what we think. And so in this great epic for which we, you and I, need an explanation, was what Lahiri Mahashai actually did. And then he conveyed it to Sri Yukteswar and to our Guru Yogananda, which is he unlocked the key to understanding from the reasoning mind, the meaning of the Gita, but also it's a jewel in the context of the epic, the Mahabharata, gave us the key. And the key has to do with unlocking the Sanskrit meaning of the major warriors in the battle. Now we know Krishna has three roles, essentially. You could say Krishna represents the infinite spirit. You could say Krishna represents the Guru. You could say Krishna represents our own soul. Doesn't really much matter. And so what we see in the Mahabharata is very meaningful to us because it's not a simplistic black and white story, which, our reasoning mind, our either-or mind wants it nice and clean. The good guys are good and they wear white hats, and the bad guys, just like Rick over there, wear a black hat. And it's not that simple, because even the bad guys have powerful qualities and abilities. Morley was pointing out something a lot of things, but one thing he pointed out that I hadn't really tuned into was that as the 17 or 18 days of the battle began to progress and move towards their denouement, their conclusion, that the Pandavas began to get stronger and purer and more focused. One of the things that Swami Kriyananda has pointed out to us in a context I'm not going to get into, but is that how, as we advance spiritually, the analogy he used is taken from the great cathedrals of Christianity. When there's no sunlight, the stained glass windows are just dark, right? There's no real color in them. But when the sun comes through the stained glass windows, it lightens all the different colors. Most people aren't bad because they don't have enough energy to be bad. Okay, they're just goody or goody-goody. But as you grow spiritually, you tap into powers that are your true nature. not the assumed nature, not the affirmed nature, like I want to get wealthy, or I want to have pleasure, or I want to whatever. Those things are outside of us. And nature itself attacks our success just by the law of duality. You can be beautiful at one point and ugly later. You can be rich one time and poor later. You know, you just never know what's going to. But inside, where that prana resides, those powers, the yogis say, are siddhis. And so as we grow, as we go within and awaken those pandavas, those qualities that reside within us at each level of the astral body, we awaken true powers which only we can take away. And so as we awaken and grow spiritually, the sunlight of prana, the light of spirit, shines through all of those chakras, all of those qualities, and not all of them are so pretty. And so it is that as we advance spiritually, we find people, you know, it says in the reading here about false teachers. Well, there are false teachers, certainly, but there are also fallen teachers who were well-meaning, but fell, were tempted. That's the path. And part of that, Swamiji would say to us, is for us to become more mature, yes, to be more discerning, yes, but also more compassionate. There, but for the grace of God, go I. Great people in all walks of life, not just spirituality. Think of the great Greek tragedies. You know, what happens in your life and my life might be a tragedy for me or you, but it isn't in the history books. But as we grow spiritually and acquire the powers of awakening of soul, the kind of power that can manifest a planet and more. They say on the causal sphere of creation, the souls who there, like apparently Sri Yukteswar is up there right now, hope he's listening, they can manifest entire universes, so he said. Sounds, I'm not all that interested, but anyway, I guess some people find that interesting. And so these things, the light shines through us. And so we are going to be tempted. We are going to have our ups and downs. And so it is that as the war of Kurukshetra continues, you find that the different warriors have all these varying qualities. And so it is that, and who is Draupadi? The great princess, the beautiful princess that the 5 Pandava brothers married. And Swamiji always point out that polyandry has no place in Indian culture. It does exist in other places on the planet, Tibet a little bit and so on, but it's symbolic, okay? She is the Kundalini. And what is the Kundalini? You know, stripping out all the myth and going to our left brain, which is where most of us live, Swami Kriyananda defines Kundalini as the entrenched vitality of our mortal delusion. Ego, right? But more than just ego in the way that we experience, it's the commitment we've made through countless lives to play it our way, to do it our way, to be separate. But that commitment, which from the standpoint of the soul is, you know, I hate to say evil, but anyway, is our undoing in any case, is also our Savior. She is pure. She is that which, when it rises, and when that we make that commitment. You know, just now in the affirmation, did you notice, Murali? The 2 qualities he listed, calmness and self-control. Well, Murali made a big thing about calmness, Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandavas, and Arjuna, the great warrior, at the Manipur chakra, self-control. Somebody asked me last night afterwards, well, why Arjuna? I mean, why wouldn't it have been the elder Pandava? Why was Arjuna the hero? Because at this stage of our awakening, you know, those of you who are Raja Yogis know that Yama Niyama aligns with the first two chakras, but that has to do mostly with being good and bad, and that kind, you know, mostly it deals with our relationship through the senses with the world around us. Most of religion is involved with do this, don't do that, right? And society at large, not just religion. But here, think of our planet Earth. On the surface is water and land. That relates to the first two. That's how we live. But within the planet is the fire in the belly, is the fire. And this is where the inner path of awakening really begins. The power of Arjuna is the power of the commitment that we make to the path of awakening. And it starts right here. I just love the stories that Murali gave about Bhima, this guy with the power of 10,000 elephants. I can't even imagine 10,000 elephants, what to mention, what power they might have. But it's a great story, you know. And in truth, if you read the whole Mahabharata, and I'm not sure I can recommend it, it's really, not only is it long, but it's really complicated. But I love reading it, that's all I can say. But this guy with the 10,000 elephants, he's kind of he's not totally dependable. In other words, Arjuna, you know, he's pushing the energy up. You come to Bhima and he's either really angry or he's got a lot of devotion. He's the power, pranayama. This is pranayama. Let pranayama be your religion. But unless that power which is ours, the kingdom of heaven is within you, unless that power is energized by the commitment to rise spiritually, it's either going to fall or it's just going to, you know, be all over the place. Bhima needs Arjuna to keep pushing the son of a gun up, okay? Yudhishthira also is a mixed bag, isn't he? He's the guy who gambled the whole kingdom away. What a schmuck, you know? He gambled his brothers. We even gambled his wife, for heaven's sake. I would have killed him if I was her, but in any case, you see what I mean? Because here at the portal to samyama, at the portal to self-realization, the narrow strait of the neck to which we rise, it's so etheric. I remember Swami Kriyananda saying that on this chakra and this level of consciousness, of deep calmness, we can perceive the creation as if from a, you know, from a spaceship or something, or from above. And we could do this, we could do that, doesn't matter where. I remember coming out of sometimes a week's seclusion, just high as a spiritual kite. And my friend in prison I correspond with told me something the other day. He said the word kite represents a piece of paper you give to the guards when you want something. Anybody ever heard of that? Anyway, so I come out of seclusion just really, on top of the world. I remember one time I got back, walked in the door, I get a phone call, and it was problematical. And I just lost my temper. You know, that's the thing. When you get so calm, you think you can do whatever you want. You think you're Superman, like I used to when I was 21. You know, everybody is born into being Superman. At least the guys are, I don't know. But, so Bhima and Yudhishthira, you see, are somewhat problematical. Arjuna, it's the fire that we need to aspire. That's why Arjuna is the greatest. Now, he had his own troubles, didn't he? But in any case, we all have our troubles. That's the point. When you read the story, it's not simplistic. It's very mature about what all these people do. And so what I find inspiring in the complexity of it is the realization that we all are a mixed bag. We all are a rainbow of colors. And what we need, really, is the Krishna. What we need is the Guru. What we need is the Christ. What we need, what saves them in the Mahabharata is the degree, the frequency, the instances Were they, like Draupadi, who is saved from being disrobed in that famous scene when she appealed? She couldn't appeal to her husbands, the schmucks, but she appealed to Krishna, and he saved her. Same thing with Arjuna on the battlefield when they broke the rules of engagement. You know, all is fair in love and war. Think about that. And so in this great epic, that's what I mean, it's highly nuanced. And so they broke the rule, both sides broke the rules of engagement, and that happens in war, right? Happens all the time. And so, but when it was done with inner guidance, then it was successful. And so it is that we find ourselves so easily judging other people. One of the pitfalls of Sangha, one of the pitfalls of walking the path with other people is the tendency to judge ourselves by them. Oh, he's a schmuck, or she's more spiritual than everybody else. And that until you achieve cosmic consciousness, you're not safe. I have seen in my life, and even in recent times, people who I thought were doing just pretty good just collapse. Like the Bronze Age collapse. You never know when a karmic bomb will go off in your life, and you will find yourself in the gutter of righteousness, if you will, and doing things you couldn't imagine you would have done. We are not safe. And therefore, the purpose of this is to bring to us the compassion, because without fellowship, without a Sangha, without Guru Bhais, without other people to walk with, we can think we're really spiritual because we meditate for 5 minutes and everybody else is the schmuck. We need one another. We need satsang. More importantly, we need divine guidance in whatever form that guidance is drawn to us by our own magnetism. It can be as Paramahansa Yogananda, at first, we might read an inspiring book, go to classes, practice different things. Bit by bit, we have the courage to begin walking our path. We have the courage to mingle with other people. Believe me, I know, I've lived in community most of my adult life. I know the resistance people have to opening up. When Padma and I were living at Ananda village, and Swami Kriyananda was alive and was our guide and teacher, sometimes you'd go to a satsang with him and you'd find out you had a new job, or you found out that he made some comment about you. He lived his life completely transparently. He paid dearly for it, if from the standpoint of the ego, but not from the standpoint of the soul. Because like in the Mahabharata, when you guys sang, I want only thee, when Draupadi appealed to Krishna, I want only thee, that was his life. Courageously he gave his life. He lived it transparently. And yet I see people coming into our communities or what have, and they're just, hiding. I understand. Some days I'd like to hide too, but he taught us to live our life like an open book. I don't mean to spill your guts with everybody. I don't mean that sort of thing. That doesn't do you any good either. But to walk the path, and sometimes you slip and fall. That's what I mean. And that's okay. You help one another to get up. That kind of thing. So this great epic that we've been given, which, in its own context, which is to say India, wonderful stories. But I'm not so sure. I think on my Bible stories, a whale eats a guy and, they destroy these towns, I don't know what it's about. It just seems pretty funky to me. So I think in the context, historically speaking, I'm not sure how, I know it's beloved, they're wonderful stories, but I'm not sure people have the kind of understanding that we need today to understand it, and that we have been given through the agency, especially of Lahiri, who unlocked the key. Murali has said there are just countless translations and commentaries on the Mahabharata. After all, it goes back thousands of years, and by some great saints as well. But this understanding which we need has been born for us in this age. We can't appreciate it because we barely even know the story to begin with, but when you're from India and you do know the story, you realize what a great gift has been given to us. I'll end with just the thought that was brought up a couple of times last week, which is that Swami Kriyananda, I think his greatest gift to us in terms of his 150 books was his writing of Yogananda's commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, which is the essence of the Mahabharata. The true spiritual jewel is the Gita. And he said millions, Yogananda announced millions will find God through this commentary. Well, it took 50 years for anything to come out in writing, and Swamiji said, you know, we need something that people can read. And he didn't have access to the original notes and transcriptions that he had access to as a young monk that were no longer available to him. And in a dream, Master came to him and said, don't forget a skylight. And he realized that the skylight was the one thing he was blessed with his entire life, which is a very clear memory of the words of Yogananda. And in a period of less than 3 months in Gurgaon, India, and Padma and I had a chance to visit him during that time, every day he'd open up a stanza of the Gita and he would never use the word channeling because that means something in our culture that he doesn't mean, but tuning in to Yogananda and the lineage, and Vyasa, the author. And he was able to bring into print, because he sat there at the Guru's feet when Yogananda was dictating his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, which were so powerful. And so we have been so greatly blessed by, the Bhagavad Gita is the Bible of India. When it came to the shores of America in the early part of the 19th century with Emerson, Thoreau, and Whitman and those transcendentalists, they were floored. I mean, Emerson especially couldn't believe, says this transcribes the ages. It's as if from a higher age something has come to us pure, holy, and what he meant was universal, not sectarian. There's nothing about religion about it. It's for the ages, and it's especially for this age. And so I cannot thank Murali enough. I said last night that he was born for this, and many other things as well, I think, but it's a great gift that he has to offer to us, and what we've been given and he is tuned into so deeply is really for the ages. It's both timeless but timely for us. So thank you, Murali-ji, and thank all of you.
Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God.